Mic check, mic check, mic check. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. So right now we're just getting used to this new Sony 6000 that I'm going to replace in my Logitech Brio with, and just trying to test the sound and everything. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. So right now we're just getting used to this new Sony 6000. All right, so I hear myself on Facebook. All right, so again, this is just a test. I don't understand why I can't see the chats in here on Facebook. But whatever. All right, so we got the live markers up. Countdown, quick intro.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Rob Report. I'm your host, Robert Bob TV Brown.
All right. Topic of today. All right, since this is a test and this is the topic of today, let's look into this. Keith Vidal loved to play the drums of all his siblings. He was the funny guy in his family, at least according to his mom. After an unsuccessful attempt to get her 18-year-old son to involuntarily be committed for treatment, Mary Wisely turned to 911 to assist him with his medical health crisis. When the first two officers arrived, they talked calmly to her distressed son and tried to get him to treatment. But minutes later, a third police officer arrived and shot him dead in front of his parents. Wilsey is one of 5 mothers who talked to insiders about calling 911 to help their son, only for officers to kill him instead. Mary Wisely had been confined to her home on the North Carolina coast for about a week, spending almost every moment monitoring her 18-year-old son, who was suicidal. Her son, Keith Vidal, had been diagnosed with schizophrenia and was in a mental health crisis. She tried to have him hospitalized on December 27, 2014, but a nurse turned him away after telling her that he wasn't having thoughts about harming himself or others. Wisely knew he was lying. She found a suicide note. So here this young man has schizophrenia, probably have bipolar, multiple personalities. Folks, when you see this in people, you have to get something done. I recently took time out to go over the Bates Motel series, and I could see what not getting people help will do. Not giving them the treatment they need will not make things better. It makes things worse. In this case, the nurse turned him away after telling her that he wasn't having thoughts about harming himself. You're going to trust the person who have multiple personalities, the person who's a schizophrenia, the person who that he don't have any harms about killing himself, and you're going to sit there and believe it. But let me keep going. Just over a week later, with no change in his behavior, the family turned to the police to ensure Vidal would get treatment. Instead, an officer shot Vidal dead in his home. family members said we were more concerned that Keith was going to hurt himself. We were never concerned for our safety because he was never a threat to anybody but himself, Wesley told Insider. In other words, we never thought about ourselves being at risk, but we knew he would harm himself. Understand, folks, when you know a person is willing to harm himself, don't you dare think he's not willing to harm you also. This is why you have to get help, and help quick, fast, and hurry. On the morning of January 5th, 2014, Wesley had just returned from a grocery store run. She said her son didn't even recognize her. Wesley's husband, Videl's stepfather, called 911. We explained to 911 dispatch that we have a child who has schizophrenia and that we wanted to do an involuntary commitment, Wesley said. The two officers responded. One had been to the home a few days earlier to try to take Vidal to the hospital for a medication adjustment and was familiar with his situation. Officer John Thomas from the small Boiling Spring Lake Police Department and Samantha Lewis Chavis, a deputy with the Brunswick County Sheriff Office, were patients with Vidal. Vidal, who holding a small screwdriver, Wesley told insiders. They attempted to de-escalate the situation by asking him if they could take him to the hospital to adjust his medication, his mother said. They also asked him how he was feeling and tried to talk with him. Vidal, who was experiencing severe paranoia, was standing in the hallway demanding that the officers leave the house. About 5 minutes later, another officer, Detective Brian Vesey of the nearby Southport Police Department, came through the front door wearing plain clothes. He didn't identify himself, Wesley said. I didn't even know who he was. I didn't even know he was a cop. That's what Wesley said. He took approximately 8 steps to reach Samantha Chavis and said, "I don't have time for all this S-H-I-T. I don't have time for all this S-H-I-T. If you can see my face right now, I don't have time for this. Lewis Chaffetz later testified in court that Vesey said something along those lines. Vidal ran into the bathroom. When he came back out, Lewis Chaffetz used her stun gun and at Vesey's request, and Vidal fell to the ground, according to Wesley and Lewis Chaffetz's testimony. Thomas climbed on top of him and took him into custody. Lewis Chaffetz was also trying to get the situation under control. So you have Keith on the floor, 2 cops on top of him, another cop to my left, and me and my husband all in the hallway. Wesley recalled, "My husband takes the screwdriver out of his hand, and out of the corner of his eyes, I see Brian Vesey take his gun out and do a kill shot." Let me repeat that again. After they had freaking control of this boy, and he posed no freaking harm, they kill him. Let me read that again. So you have Keith on the floor, that's the kid, 2 cops on top of him, another cop to the left on the side, and the lady and her husband in the hallway. The husband takes the screwdriver out of his hand. That cops would have normally killed the black person as soon as they saw the screwdriver. They probably would have just shot him, and he could have been fixing the doorbell. It has happened over and over again all across America. They have done that. One man was fixing the doorbell. The cops came up to him, and he turned around with the screwdriver, and they shoot him. This guy was on the floor. He was contained. They took the weapon, if it was a weapon, out of his hand. A screwdriver isn't a weapon. It could be used as a weapon, but it's not a freaking weapon. My husband takes the screwdriver out of his hand, and out of the corner of my eye, I see Brian Vasey take his gun out and do a kill shot. Vasey fired 14 seconds after Louis Chaffetz stunned Vidal. Chaffetz testified in 2016, according to the Port City Daily. In other words, he was stunned. He wasn't going anywhere. The police had him under control. And here come this idiot deciding to kill the boy. My son is laying on the floor in the hallway, bleeding, dead. I watched his eyes roll in the back of his head. I watched my son die. Louis Chaffetz said the bang was deafening. That's how loud that shot was. Thomas said he was so close that he went outside after the shooting to ask other officers whether he was injured too. A life gone in less than 2 minutes. From the time Vasey arrived at Wisely's home to when he alerted the station that he had discharged his weapon, 70 seconds has passed. 70 seconds. A little over a minute. He blew Samantha Chaffetz's eardrums out. He blew Samantha Chaffetz's eardrums out. He could have shot the other officer in the head. All this is taking place in a 3-foot hallway. He put those officers in danger, and he hurt one of those officers, all because he didn't have time for this SHIT. Vasey was eventually charged with voluntary manslaughter. He was acquitted in a bench trial in 2016. At first, Vasey told investigators he fired in self-defense. At the trial, though, he said he fired to protect the other officers. So this lying son of a gun, trying to cover himself and trying to use the other officers as an excuse after they done had this dude contained. He could not get up, and I had a hold of his hands, Thomas said. According to the court transcript viewed by Insider, my recollection that is he never came close to hurting me. This is according to a police officer. My recollection is that he never came close to hurting me. So I don't know what this fool talking about. I wasn't in danger. On the stand, Thomas was asked whether Vasey made the appropriate call to ask officers to tase Vidal. Thomas responded, no. He was not long enough there to assess the situation. In other words, you just got here, man. You don't know what's going on. On the day of the shooting, Vasey had several drugs in his system. Vasey, the police officer, the cop, had several drugs in his system, including the antidepressant Cymbalta, the anxiety drug Klonopin, the painkiller hydrocodone, 2 blood pressure medications, and acid reflux medication, court transcript says. Vasey testified in court that the drugs were all prescribed to him by doctors for various medical conditions and symptoms, including trouble sleeping, restless leg syndrome, and pain from an oral surgery a month prior. Researchers found that in the U.S., about 10% police calls, researchers have found that in the U.S., about 10% of police calls for services each year involve some form of mental illness crisis. Dennis Kennedy, a former officer and current professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, recently told insiders in 2015 police records indicated that about 25% of the people that police shoot were experiencing such a crisis. The Washington Post reported as of mid-October this year that figures was nearly 20%. A 2015 study by the Treatment Advocacy Center found that the risk of being killed by law enforcement for people with an untreated mental illness is about 1 in 50. 1 in 50. That's a whole lot, folks. Now, it's 16 times as high as the risk for other people. Police reform advocates around the country, including some mothers who lost their children to police shooting, are pushing for alternatives to 911 to respond to mental health crisis. Some of the cities have created mental health response team staff with unarmed clinicians who responded to the emergencies, who respond to emergency situation without the police in most cases. The Southport Police Department didn't return a message seeking a comment about this case. Now, I'm going to give you a chance to hear the press conference from the Vidals.
Should not be treated like this. Mentally ill people, we called the police department for help. We didn't call the police department to have our son murdered in front of our eyes.
How did it make you feel?
And to top it off, we weren't allowed to go in the ambulance with my son. I found out my son was dead over a telephone call. I still have not seen my son, and our district attorney will not give special permission so I could see my son. So to this day, right now, to this hour, I still have not seen my deceased son.
I'm so sorry.
So am I.
How does it make you feel that you weren't even invited to this press conference?
Well,
cover-up.
Cover-up. Big
Cover-up's
old
already
cover-up.
started.
We got told twice. First, he was going to Jacksonville, North Carolina for an autopsy.
Now, folks, give me a moment. As you know, I'm back live doing the live stuff, and I'm having difficulties already. And I can be on day with this. I was just testing out the camera. I wasn't really trying to do a story. I was just testing out the camera. That's all. My wonderful brother, Reggie, decided to bless me with a mirrorless camera, and I mirrored and matched it with the Brio, and I'm kind of liking the mirrorless camera. Mighty fine. Okay, mighty fine. The whole point of this story is mental illness is a real situation. You got to get people help. When you see the signs, you need to try to smooth your way into getting people help. You can't baby the help. You know, when it reminds me of the Norman Bates television series, how his mother just babied the situation and didn't give him the help until it was almost freaking too late. And now when it was too late and he was on his murder spree, he was still trying to get some help. I talked about one part in the story where he said that he didn't even recognize who we were. He didn't even know who we are. That's part of being schizophrenic. That's part of suffering from schizophrenia, bipolar, or whatever. You can literally become one person that you were not born to be. In your mindset, you could be somebody else. Or you can be a person who have no identity. In Norman Bates, his mother was so close to him and so clouded around him and saturated around him and so inseparable around him that she was actually in his head. To the point that it thought his mama was going out hurting people when it was really him hurting people, but in his mental capacity, he put on the persona of his mama and went out and did all these murders. And he actually thought his real mama did that because once he came to from a blackout, whatever, he's like, oh, mother, what did you do? But people suffer this stuff every freaking day. Mental illness is a real deal thing. I had to deal with mental situations. I had to seek some help. When my son died, man, I had to get some mental help, man. That really hit me hard. And then what gets me out of my situation, I think about other people who've been through the same thing. My brother been through war. And the one who gave me this camera, the one who's a blessing to me, he had brought a son into his life as his own son, and he committed suicide. So I imagine what the pain that we can go through mentally from losing someone or from something tragic happening to us. But imagine the pain of people who grew up with mental illness all their freaking life, and nobody thought anything to get them some help. Second thing, when you're dealing with mental illness, every city, every state need to really, really develop a section in the police department. If you're going to do stupid stuff like that, develop a section in the police department that is sensitive to people with mental illness. Not like this idiot. I ain't got time for this. Pow. And then he got an acquittal, a freaking acquittal. He said, I don't have time for this, and shot the boy after he was subdued, after he was unarmed, if you want to call a screwdriver a weapon. After all this, he don't have time for this, man. Fool, you just got here. We've been dealing with one. I've been dealing with this boy for a while. Like, I deal with the boy every day. How in the world you come from out of the blue and you just shoot the dude? Yeah, that happens to black people, whether they're mental ill or not. Happened to us. So imagine this. This was a white kid. And don't get me wrong. I do recognize that white people get brutalized by police too. Not on the level as black people, but they do. And they usually try to gauge what type of white person they are to see if they can take advantage of them. And when they find out this not the one you need to mess with, then they'll back off. Not so with us. The nerves of him saying, I don't have time for this. Where you got to go, man? Pick up a bucket of chicken? Some biscuits? You that hungry? You ain't got time for this, that you're going to kill an innocent kid? A kid with mental illnesses? What you ain't got time for? What your wife home? Hot, ready, and bothered? You just got to hurry up and get some? Man, if you got... Being a police officer is already a serious job. You need to be mentally stable before you take the job. You need to go through different treatments or different classes or different studies or whatever, psychological counsel while you're going through. Every police officer need to do a psych eval every freaking month. They need to be tended to by a psychiatrist every freaking month just to keep them stable, because it is a stressful job. I know, I was married to one who happened to be bipolar as a result of it. It's a serious situation. We have too many people in America that suffer from mental illness. And either they can go two ways. It can go down the path of living with it as a norm, taking the medication, making sure you're chemically balanced and you live a full life, because these people still need people to love them. They still need people to encourage them. They still need to be loved by their husbands or spouse. I mean, once I find out I found out about my second wife. Yeah, I've been married multiple times, from my first wife. And once I knew that, my first wife was like, Rob, I didn't know I had it till later. You got to take the time out to... People like us need people to help us get through this. So do your best to help her get through this. And I did, and I tried my best to try to hang in there with her. I wasn't moving back home, I'll tell you that, because prior to that, I went through a real hard situation with her. So I wasn't moving back home. So anytime you wake up and your wife's standing behind you with something behind her back... But this is a serious situation, and don't get me wrong, I love my wife, and I wanted her to get the help, and I was willing to be there with her. But when you're so bad off, you don't want your help to be there with you when you get the help. That's bad. In this case, which is many cases in America and all across the world, you got a person suffering from schizophrenia. It's not his fault. All he needs is medical treatment. He can live life as normal. The police who knew him were there. They got the guy under control. No need to do anything. Let's call the ambulance, and then let's get him to sign this once we get into the hospital to prove that you're mentally unstable and you need to get some help and your parents want you to get it. This guy say he ain't had time for it. Shot him dead and gonna use lame excuses that he feared for his life and I fear for my partner's life. I was protecting my police officer. He shot that boy so hard that it blew out the eardrums of the parent. If you know somebody that's mentally ill, reach out to them. Let them know that you love them, and let them know that no matter what. Oh shoot! No matter what, I'm here for you. And let them know, try to sympathize, try to be empathetic with them, because we all have mental issues. We're all are not 100% stable. I mean, yours might be 5%, somebody maybe 50% to 95% unstable. But we all have to deal with our mental capacities and make sure that we stay level. So tell people who have a mental condition about your mental issues that you deal with, because most everybody do. And just vow to be there for one another. And when they have that situation, you can always be there to help them through it. They need people to help them through it. And we need to really, really push legislation that penalize cops for doing stupid stuff like this. This is why that executive order from Joe Biden kind of ticked me out, because not only did you not do something for black people, you didn't do nothing against the enemy of black people. And the enemy of black people is an over-aggressive, jacked up, pumped up, souped up, psychopathic cop. And that's not an enemy just to black people. That could be an enemy to, as you see in this story, to different types of people. Even kids who are different with schizophrenia. Somebody looking to use their position to deal with their mental issues. They need to, if you got a mental issue, you don't need to be on the force in the freaking first place. You need to do a psych eval every 90 days. You need to do counseling every 90 days. And when it comes to people with mental illness, you don't send the police department to go pick them up. You create a department. It could be within the police department, because here in New York, we got a department to deal with homelessness. Yes, badge and all, to help people get off the streets. You know, we have a department that deals with just dealing with at-risk youth. We have a department to deal with some of the most hardest hit situation that goes on in the city. So I love New York City, and that's why I myself try my best to work with getting people off the streets in the middle of the night. In a situation like this when we're in a freaking blizzard, there's literally a blizzard going on right now in New York. Yeah. To keep your loved ones from facing a dumb, idiot, stupid, foolish cop that need his butt whooped. Well, look, I lost my son. I miss my son. I would have killed that guy. I'm gonna just tell you right now, I would have killed him. Get the people the help that they need. Be their friends. Make sure you're there for them, even when they turn around and attack you. Understand it's not the real them. It's the schizophrenia. It's the bipolar. It's the sickness that's making them see you that way, but they really don't see you that way. It's like sometimes somebody else is taking over. I can go a little deeper than that, but I'm not going to do it today. Love them unconditionally, and when you see that they're about to go off on the ledge, get them the help. If you have to personally, take them for some fries and then go to the police department after that, whatever. Any means necessary. I'm Robert Brown with the Rob Report, and I was just doing a test. I don't know if I'm gonna make this a story or not, but I was just testing this camera that my brother got me, and I think it's a pretty decent camera. Right now I'm doing like 720 or 1080p at 30 frames per second, and the color is good, and the lighting is good. I think this is going to be my daily driver from now on. I mean, I got another DSLR camera. I got an Nikon D5500 that does great too, but this one it fits perfect, and I think I'm good. All right, I'm Rob Brown with the Rob Report. I'll holler at you later, my peoples. I love you. Peace.